Chapter 61 Poultry and Livestock. You are listening at novelfold.audio. For example, domestic pigs are omnivorous animals that can be raised freely and are very easy to raise. Of course, the cost is also high, piglets are very expensive, and the growth cycle is also long. They can't eat anything nutritious. In addition to the problem of domesticated species, they can only grow to about 100 kilograms at most, which is incomparable to the wild 1,000-kilogram demon pigs. Only carpenters, blacksmiths, stewards, guards and other people with good family conditions will raise various livestock and kill them for food when they grow up, which can be regarded as an improvement in life. Ordinary farmers do not raise pigs for killing and eating. After all, they don't have much extra income, and humans live for various survival needs. What if there is no other source of income besides farming? They can only raise these livestock and sell them to local stewards or foreign merchants in exchange for various consumables. Livestock is not only their extremely precious assets, but also can be used to measure social status. For example, a family that can afford to raise pigs and sheep will never live too badly, and will have a stronger ability to resist risks. Once something goes wrong, they can sell the pigs and sheep to survive for a long time. Moore was very efficient. He notified everyone on the spot to send the livestock to the origin manor today. This was beyond Roman's expectation. He thought this guy would go door to door to buy. It would be difficult to take them back if they were released, and they would not let them lead all the livestock back. So the threshold of the gate of the origin manor was trampled all afternoon, to be precise. There was no threshold, no gate, and even no fence. Roman's origin manor was open, the entire basin belonged to him, and the surrounding mountains were his walls. Roman received more than 100 domestic pigs, 300 sheep, more than 100 geese, more than 400 ducks and more than 1,000 chickens today, spending a total of more than 50 gold coins. In order to quickly solve the acquisition problem, his purchase price was higher than the market price. For example, the price of an adult domestic pig is 1.2 to 1.4 silver coins. And not all domestic pigs are adult pigs. Roman purchased them at 1.5 silver coins. For those pigs weighing less than 100 kilograms, 1 silver coin was also given as appropriate. For another example, a sheep weighing 70 to 80 kilograms was worth at most 9 copper coins, and Roman bought all of them at the price of 9 copper coins, and gave 6 or 5 copper coins for sheep weighing less than 50 kilograms. Roman did not bargain, lest these idiots think that the Lord was stingy and they were selling at a loss. Just give money like crazy. If there is no cash, use salt instead. It is not a problem to exchange a chicken for 4 or 5 kilograms of salt, and the farmer can resell the salt to the merchant. If he doesn't want the salt, he can write an IOU. Roman still has this credibility now. In short, the messy scene lasted for 3 or 4 hours. Everyone went back satisfied. Only Roman was a little caught off guard looking at the scene of livestock and feces all over the ground in front of him, secretly cursing Moore for being brainless. Fortunately, the farmers had some brains and tied up the legs and feet of cattle, sheep, chickens, ducks and geese with straw ropes or bark ropes, so that they could not run around or fly all over the sky. Roman had no choice but to lead people to kill all the chickens, ducks and geese. Even the newly born chicks were not spared. Green and Aaron killed until they were covered in blood, and the feathers were flying everywhere. All the people in the origin manor, the main force was more than 300 miners, under the command of Roman and Seth. They made fire, added water, plucked feathers, cut open the abdomen, cleaned the internal organs. Even 5 or 6-year-old children had to run around with firewood. Finally, the naked chickens, ducks and geese were hung up with ropes to air dry, and a large amount of salt was applied to their bodies, and large livestock such as pigs and sheep were temporarily locked up in the barn with slaves. Now the number of people in charge of the barn has increased to 100. Like slaves, they sleep in the barn every day. To be precise, sleeping in the barn was not considered abuse, but a normal phenomenon in this era, because they were responsible for the diet and hygiene of the oxen and draft horses. The work intensity was very high. If they lived too far away, they could not take care of them in time. The grass consumption of each animal alone was a huge number, not to mention the cleaning of feces. An ox produced 20 to 30 kilograms of feces every day. Roman also asked them to transport all the feces to a designated place for composting, and draft horses had to eat crops such as oats or grains. These 100 or so people were the limit for taking care of the oxen and horses. Now that so many livestock were stuffed in, the situation was a little out of control. Roman had to order the neighbors and children of the oxen and horses to help out. Neighbors refer to the ox and horse slaves who lived under the barn, and children refer to the many underage oxen and horses. In the manor, they not only had to learn letters and numbers, but also do what they could. Batch boiling of maltose was also one of their jobs, and in return, it was okay for them to steal a few bites. The intensity of work in the manor was not very high, and the food was provided, which was much better than their previous life at home. They were busy until dark, and then Roman sent the children back. It was the 71st day when Roman came to Siggy town. As the sky was slightly bright, more than 100 cooks began to get busy. According to Roman's request, breakfast was a bowl of mixed vegetable soup with salt and rye flour, and the usual 3 slices of black bread. A bowl of mixed vegetable soup weighed only 7 or 8 taels. After breakfast, the farmers began to repair the road. The steps of the original concrete paving are not complicated and easy to master. The only thing to worry about is the ratio between lime and clay, gravel and straw. This is not a big problem. It is nothing more than the principle of adding more water to flour and more flour to water. When it is spread forward during the mixing process, it will be even. Roman set up a signpost 500 meters away. The signpost will remind them that as long as they repair it here, they can end today's work. If they can't repair it, someone will die. But this group of cattle and horses still has potential. Although this group of idiots is stupid, they are really hard-working. As long as they can fill their stomachs, they will really work hard. When they are familiar with this work, they can increase the workload from 500 meters to 600 meters or 700 meters. Without the right tools, they are already very hard-working with this efficiency. Roman took 50 chickens killed yesterday in the morning. After drying overnight, the skin of the chicken became a little hard, and he took it to the food camp. After the women who cooked breakfast and ate their own meals, and washed all the wooden bowls and plates, they began to prepare lunch. They basically had no free time. In addition, they had to assign people to take care of children and the elderly who could not walk. There were basically no elderly people, and those who only ate and did not work would be naturally eliminated, and the main care objects were children under 5 years old. Agata was special. Her child was not even weaned, so she was also arranged here. Agata, find someone to cut out these chickens, which is also part of lunch. Roman stood beside the camp, waved to the familiar white-haired female slave, and then pointed to the carriage behind and said. Agata didn't expect Roman to remember her name. She had been in Siggy town for more than half a month and had basically adapted to life here. The only feeling was that it was not like a slave's life. Although there were many things to do, the food was good, no one abused them, they had new clothes to wear, and they could get 2 kilograms of milk from the manor every day to feed Vera, which was unimaginable in the northern land. She said meekly, "My lord, I understand." Chapter 62 Forging Experience 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 62 Forging Experience +1. Roman went to the blacksmith shop today. Lux thought Roman was here to inspect the work and was ready to report on his work, but he didn't expect that the lord took the hammer from a blacksmith apprentice and used it himself. The apprentice stood beside him at a loss, watching Roman swing the hammer. There was a clang sound. The red-hot iron ingot was slightly deformed under the hammer. Ah, this. Lux was completely stunned. It felt like the hammer was not hitting the ingot, but his head. I know you want me to train qualified blacksmiths, because you have a lot of work, so let them come to compete with me for business, but there is no need to do it yourself, right? Lux was confused and watched Roman swing the hammer several times. Every time it was powerful, sparks flew everywhere. Roman said, "Lax, what do you think of my work?" Lax said truthfully, "I don't think it's suitable." "That's true. I'm still a novice in blacksmithing. I mean your status. Anyway, it's unnecessary for nobles to compete with blacksmiths for business." Roman raised his face and said, "Do you think I can't be a blacksmith?" "That's not what I mean. What else can I do?" "Just be happy." Lax informed Roman of the current progress of the blacksmith shed. "The quality of these iron ingots is very good. So far, we have made 60 pickaxes, 30 hoes and 15 flat wedges. Each pickaxe weighs 3 Gen, the hoe weighs 2 Gen, and the iron wedge weighs 2 Gen. A total of nearly 300 Gen of iron was consumed, different from the heavy plow that Lax had cast before. Although that thing is very large, there are not many of them, and the structure is simple. The most difficult part is the plowshare part, because the plowshare is required to be very sharp. But the sharpness is only enough to split the soil, not to cut vegetables. The pickaxe and hoe are different. Each pickaxe must be repeatedly struck thousands of times and heated and forged dozens of times, otherwise it cannot bear the high-intensity mining task. This is how the saying of 1,000 hammers and 100 tempers came from. These 20 or 30 people spent several days forging these tools, which made them breathless. Roman said, "The salt mine is enough for the time being. Lux, let everyone stop, you will forge something else next." Needless to say, the shovel, this thing is a sharp tool for infrastructure, and it must be forged. It can easily increase the paving speed by 30 to 50%. Roman needs at least hundreds of shovels, both square-headed and pointed ones, and everyone must have one. Secondly, Roman is very concerned about the growth of the wheat field. The spring wheat will enter the harvest period in more than a month, and it will not work without the right farm tools. Some things cannot be prepared in advance. Roman drew a new design for Lax. It was a straight iron knife that was 1 meter long and 5 centimeters wide, and its shape was very similar to a guillotine. This thing was called a scythe. A strong man could harvest 4 or 5 acres of wheat with a scythe every day, which could greatly save labor. Roman's task for Lax was to forge 100 scythes within a month. This was just its blade, and after it was forged, it would be fixed on a woven fabric similar to a winnowing basket. So he had to ask the carpenter Vic to come over. Roman himself had to forge something else. Forging experience +1. He found an anvil on his own and began his forging journey as a craftsman. Lax was also very concerned about Roman's actions. There was no way, as he had the highest status in the entire blacksmith shed, although the status of blacksmiths in this era was not low, and most blacksmiths had a very good relationship with the local lords. The more skilled a blacksmith's craftsmanship was, the higher his status would be. The noble lords also treated blacksmiths with great favors, and the situation of high-level professionals was naturally different from that of civilians, but I had never seen a noble lord personally go into battle to grab business. Forging experience +1. Is Master Roman going to forge a kitchen knife? Forging experience +1, but his forging hammer technique is very awkward, and he obviously has never forged iron before. It is better to persuade him to become a noble lord, because not everyone can do iron. Forging experience +1, looks a bit decent. Forging experience +1, Forging experience +1, Lux watched Roman spend an afternoon, from a novice to a mature blacksmith with a plan in mind, from the initial random knocking to the perfect point of each hammer drop. Finally, a kitchen knife with a cold and shining light was forged. It can't be said to be a hair-breaking blow, but it can be said to be of high quality. After earning 5 points of forging experience in one afternoon, Roman was quite satisfied. He was quite proud of his innate iron forging body. Roman examined his first kitchen knife, found a wooden handle to install it, and then left the iron forging shed under Lux's stunned gaze. Back to the origin manor, Roman gave the kitchen knife he made today to Chef Bob. "You have been working diligently these days. Keep up the good work in the future. I made this thing myself, and I give it to you as a reward." Chef Bob started learning cooking from his father at the age of 6, and worked in the Grand Duke's territory for 20 years. His pot-bellied appearance makes him look like he is in his 30s or 40s. He secretly said that it is more important for you to give me a day off than anything else. Bob had doubts about Roman's statement that he had made it with his own hands, but this did not prevent him from feeling excited about Roman's appreciation. Roman just let it go. He didn't expect to kill Bob with a kitchen knife, but it was still possible to let Bob continue to work for him without any complaints. Over dinner, Seth reported to him the details of the day. The road construction target has been achieved. Roman was not surprised. In the morning, he had some estimates of the road paving progress. He would definitely be able to pave 500 meters before dark. In the early stages of road construction, because the difficulty of transporting materials was not high, the speed was relatively fast. It became more difficult in the second half, as building materials needed to be transported back and forth. The salt mine is not convenient either. Due to road construction, salt mine workers can only go around by car. Fortunately, the previously flat road was very wide and basically did not affect transportation. Roman grabbed the fried chicken legs and bit into the leg meat slowly. He said to Seth, "I asked Lux to work overtime to make a batch of shovels. The paving speed will be faster and faster in the future. I want to completely repair this road before the summer harvest." Roman set this goal. Seth shook his head and said, "I'm just afraid there won't be enough labor in other areas." Roman said calmly, "It doesn't matter, more slaves will be sent to Siggy Town in the future." "Too many slaves is not a good thing for you," Seth advised. "Why?" "They are refugees with no residence or land. They are potentially unstable factors and have their own agendas." Chapter 63 The Trade of Salt and Iron. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Roman turned to look at Seth. He spoke quietly. "If they are displaced, then I will let them settle down. If there is no job, then I will give them a job. If there is no food, then I will give them food. But if you don't obey my orders, then go to hell." Who do you think owns their own land in Siggy Town now?" Seth was speechless. The answer is no one. He knows that all the land in Siggy Town has been reclaimed by Roman. He exercised the rights of the Lord with extremely tough methods. Of course he thought about the consequences, but the worst expectations didn't happen. No one wants to die as long as they can live. Slaves were attached to their sellers, farmers to their lords. The rulers invariably divided the people at the bottom into two classes. There are slaves called freemen, and slaves called slaves. The identity of freemen existed to stimulate the enthusiasm of slaves, because when the difference in force between farmers and knights is too large, farmers become like slaves. Roman shattered the illusion. A short period of harsh treatment is not a recipe for disaster, but prolonged tyranny is sure to spark resistance. What Roman did was enough to shake his position and allow the farmers who had lost their land to organize and overthrow his rule. Even if they died, they would be willing to cut themselves off to bring Roman down. Why is Siggy Town still stable? Because of a free lunch. Just a free lunch has tamed the souls of most people in Siggy Town, weakened their will to resist, and allowed them to join an unfamiliar labor model. Seth had to admit, the price was high. Initially only one meal was provided, then two at planting time, but now 3 meals are provided. Roman, you, this aristocratic gentleman, are becoming more and more treasonous. Today they consumed about 6,000 kilograms of various grains and vegetables, worth about 2 gold coins. If the merchants in Siggy Town had not contacted the grain merchants and could exchange salt for grain, Siggy Town would have been unable to afford this huge consumption. Now there are grain ships arriving at the dock every 2 days. Roman snorted. "If someone wants to oppose me because of this, then give it a try. I want to see who will oppose whom and who will support whom." Seth was tempted to say that this method of rule was monstrous. In the world, only farmers support lords, and no lords ever support peasants. Of course, lords will only publicize this matter in reverse. The lords were plundering the food grown by the farmers, either selling it to get money, or using it for their own use and training warriors. Leave only part of the grain to the farmers and then claim that he has fed the farmers. On the contrary, it belongs to Tian Gang, but Roman never plundered the farmers' food. Instead, he had to buy food to feed the farmers. After rebelling against Tian Gang, he rebelled against Tian Gang again. Other lords just talk casually when they say they want to feed the farmers. Are you serious? Seth acknowledged the value of the salt mine, but that was no reason for Roman's wanton spending, mainly because it's too much money. He is very busy every day now. Sometimes I stay on the dock, recording the expenditure on salt and the deposit of miscellaneous grains. That's not a small amount, but several thousand caddies or 10,000 caddies. Sometimes I have to be responsible for supervising the progress of the project, calculating how much food is consumed every day, hiring a large number of craftsmen from Siggy Town, and calculating the amounts of various expenses. Seth felt the goods representing copper coins, silver coins, and gold coins flowing through his fingers like flowing water. It can't be saved at all. Every time he had a little spare time, Roman would spend it without restraint. Seth was troubled by this. Just after getting 70 gold coins from Mori, Roman bought all the livestock in Siggy Town in a blink of an eye, just to reduce the impact of the livestock on their daily life and increase their working time. This approach is not impossible, but how can we accumulate wealth in the long run? When will an army be built? Seth comes from the Archduchy of Armor Splitter, and no one knows better than him the financial investment required to build an army. That would be astronomical. Look at the current daily expenditure on food. This wealth can almost buy a packhorse carrying a man. He was so fucked up. You can't keep buying food, Seth advised. Roman chuckled and said, Seth, I think you are too busy. Go check out the fields. I just need to wait until the summer harvest. Early the next morning, Seth did not continue accounting. Instead, he went to the 2,000 acres of wheat land. He hadn't been here for a long time, and Roman's orders always came in short bursts, leaving him busy and leaving no one with time to think. It was like being on a carriage that was speeding along the cliff but couldn't turn back. Seth stood in front of the wheat field, completely stunned. Oh gods! His pupils clearly reflected the green waves like the ocean. It's as vast as a grassland. As the breeze blew, the waves swayed, and there was a rustling sound. Seth stopped admonishing Roman. He just became more serious about his work, but he still corrected Roman's somewhat messy collar and cuffs, because Roman plunged into the blacksmith shed and didn't come back until late every day. He opened his chest unkempt all day long and tinkled iron with the other blacksmith apprentices. Unlike others, they strike iron because of their mission. Roman's blacksmithing is purely for gaining experience, and whatever he wants to build depends on his hobbies. So the tools he made were not shovels and sickles. Instead, they were large iron pots, kitchen knives, spatulas, iron spoons and other items. Roman knew that the town of Sigi would experience a long period of big pot meals in the future, and now the kitchen utensils cannot meet the needs of large kitchens. In fact, those peasant women have always relied on pottery to cook. Bang! Roman's hammer fell. He felt it necessary to reform the kitchen utensils. Forging experience +1. Forging experience +1. Forging experience +1. On the 5th day of Roman's forging, a group of merchant ships arrived in Sigi town. The owner of the merchant ship claimed to be Mori's brother. After leaving Sigi town, Mori conveyed Roman's willingness to cooperate to his brother. Then his brother brought Roman 2,500 kilograms of iron ingots. The price given was 1 gold coin for 25 kilograms. In other words, Roman needed to pay 100 gold coins to get these iron ingots. And it was not the best quality iron ingot. If you buy those relatively cheap iron ingots, these 100 gold coins can even buy 5,000 kilograms of iron, but this requires connections, long-term communication, and sending people to negotiate, and Roman is short of time, has no connections, and has no time to inquire about where iron is produced. Let him be a sucker, of course. According to the business contract, Roman can use salt to barter, but Roman did not show up when he heard the other party's offer in the blacksmith shop. He was too lazy to come out and negotiate with Mori's brother. The whole transaction was hosted by Seth. When Seth came to ask for his opinion, Roman did not raise the price, and directly exchanged with the other party at the price of 0.2 copper coins per kilogram of salt. In this way, Mori's brother used 2,500 kilograms of iron to pull away 50,000 kilograms of salt. Salt itself is an expensive consumable in this era. Basically, as long as you control a salt-producing area, you control an important economic lifeline. The development of Sigi town has just started, so Roman is not worried that he will be noticed immediately. The merchants who do business with him will help him keep this secret for the time being. Sometimes the hatred between colleagues is naked. At most, they will exchange the development of the situation and gossip with each other, and they have always kept their mouths shut about the origin of their goods. They will never spread it, and even if they spread it, no one may believe it. This is also one of the commercial drawbacks of the feudal era. Of course, over time, a large amount of salt will impact the market and cause price fluctuations, which will definitely not be concealed. In just a year or two, everyone will find that there is another salt-producing area that is easy to mine on this land, but Roman doesn't care. Humph. By then. Chapter 64 Hydraulic Forging Hammer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After 7 days of hard work, Roman finally saw the prompt for skill upgrade, level 2 forging, 0//380. Milestone unlocked. How steel is made. How steel is made. Obtain 500 original stones. Countless kinds of knowledge also emerged in his mind, and the effect was even more intense than the improvement of planting skills. Roman rubbed his temples, received everything, and sorted it out. His red eyes lit up immediately. It was as if a flame was ignited in the depths of his eyes. Got it. What got it? Lax, who had always been paying attention to Roman, couldn't help asking. These days, he watched Roman forge one big iron pot after another, and his craftsmanship became more and more sophisticated, and in the end he completely surpassed him. Today, this devil finally stopped, otherwise he didn't know whether he should call himself a blacksmith. Roman raised the corner of his mouth. Hydraulic forging hammer. Lax was at a loss, but Roman didn't explain so much. He directly suspended all the work of the blacksmith apprentices. In the past few days, they have forged 50 or 60 shovels day and night, which is far from meeting the needs of road paving workers. The main reason is that this thing is too troublesome, only slightly worse than the craftsmanship of forging plate armor. Now they have more important things to do. Roman called Vic again and asked all carpenters to follow his orders to make all the materials needed for the hydraulic forging hammer. The hydraulic forging hammer is not complicated in nature, and it can be built by mastering the key knowledge. Roman designed a multi-gear transmission shaft system, which has a more complex structure. The advantage is that it can drive 5 or even more forging hammers to move at the same time. This power system is similar to the courtyard startling deer. The water in the courtyard flows into the bamboo tube, the tail falls down and rises again, making a crisp sound, and the process is repeated, which is quite artistic. The water wheel has more and larger water buckets to control the continuous rise and fall of those huge and heavy forging hammers. The water wheel drives the transmission shaft, which can rotate once in 8 seconds. Once the transmission shaft rotates once, it can transmit power through the gears to drive each forging hammer to rise and fall 5 times, with a very high frequency. Under this high-frequency forging, the raw iron ingots were quickly forged into steel. Roman spent 2 days, and all the blacksmiths and carpenters were busy because of his instructions, and finally arranged this huge power transmission system. The water system in this basin is well developed, and the residents of Siggy Town call it the winding river. Like the traces of a snake crawling, the river has a stable flow rate and a suitable depth, which is very suitable for the use of hydraulic forging hammers. Each forging hammer weighs about 200 kilograms, and 5 forging hammers directly use 1,000 kilograms of steel, but it's all worth it. Even a superhuman like Roman can't lift a 200-kilogram forging hammer for a long time, and lift and drop it at this frequency, not to mention long-term maintenance. Even if it is maintained for a short period of more than 10 minutes, his arms will be useless, but the transmission shaft and gears will not be like this. Even if they are damaged, they only need to replace the wood. Those heavy and huge forging hammers rise and fall for a long time. Lax opened his mouth and looked at the shocking scene in front of him in disbelief. For Roman, this was just an appetizer. He was happy because he could continue to save labor. But it was not the case for Lux. He seemed to have seen the first ray of light at the beginning of the world, and his brain stopped working. Roman snorted, "You are a group of lucky fools. You have seen the real power. Watch it. No extraordinary person can be its opponent. From now on, I will lead all of you forward." When everyone recovered from the shock, they found that Roman had left the blacksmith shed at some point. Roman knew that Lux would make good use of the power system of the hydraulic forging hammer and forge more steel tools for him later. Steel tools mean that production efficiency can be greatly improved. He has too many things to do. Sometimes it is not that he can't brush up his skills, but that various environmental restrictions prevent him from developing comprehensively. Most skills are not necessary to brush up, and it will only waste time, because there are not enough people to meet his various development needs. Roman is troubled by the lack of labor every day. Of course, the construction progress is proceeding in an orderly manner. With the help of iron tools such as shovels and hoes, the progress of road construction immediately increased significantly. In 7 days, they actually advanced nearly 5 kilometers in length, with an average of 700 meters per day. This was also due to the 50 chickens that Roman fed them every day. Only the frontline laborers could eat them, although on average, more than 10 people shared 1 chicken, and each person could eat at most 2 pieces of chicken, but this was still a rare enjoyment. Most farmers raised poultry not to satisfy their appetite, but to raise them for money and by various necessities of life. They thought that after the poultry was bought by the Lord, they would never see it again in this life. However, who could have expected that after only a few days, they actually saw the poultry they had raised since childhood in the big iron pot? This made them shed sad tears at the corners of their mouths. If the air-dried chicken was eaten up, Roman would feed them ducks. When the ducks are all eaten, they will be fed to the geese, and when the geese are all eaten, they will start slaughtering the pigs and sheep. That was the original plan. But things suddenly took a turn. The incident started when Roman was forging iron. Several wild boars rushed out of the forest north of the Origin Manor at night and destroyed the vegetable fields he had reclaimed. Although the scope of the damage was not large, about half an acre of land, there was still some loss. Seeing this, Gwawl burst into tears. She finally moved the pine needle soil from the mixed woods and sprinkled a layer on the 10 acres of vegetable fields. Every day after studying, she squatted beside the vegetable fields to watch their growth. It was about 10 days before they could harvest. As a result, many tubers of wind grass were dug out and gnawed by wild boars, which naturally made her feel very uncomfortable. In fact, in previous years in the town of Stjur, such wild beasts often ravaged the fields and destroyed crops, and the locals were often helpless. They had to let them go. Even the guards could only deal with wild beasts that attacked people and villages, and it was impossible to watch over all the land. Moore had no interest in hunting. Before, the poultry raised in the town of Stjur was enough for their daily needs. Hunting meant danger, but Roman couldn't bear it. He felt that these spring wild boars were here to bring warmth. If you don't take the road to heaven, you will go to hell. That he immediately called Green and Aaron. Doda was the captain, leading 40 guards to stand in front of Roman. All of them were tall and straight, wearing the same style of linen military uniforms, with straight waists. They looked outstanding in their military posture. After standing for so long, they basically did nothing in the past month and devoted themselves to training. They had to train for 3 or 4 hours every day just for military posture and marching in step. They had 3 meals a day and meat every day, without any logistical concerns. Chapter 65 Level 2 Hunting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Roman had very high requirements for soldiers. Not only did he let Aaron undergo basic training, but he also asked him and Green to provide cultural education to everyone. At the very least, we must understand the size of numbers. Many people in this era do not have numerical thinking. Roman needs civilized teachers, not illiterate teachers. It will not hurt him to let them receive education. This time, Roman personally led the hunt, carrying the split armor great bow on his back, and then led people to search for traces of wild beasts all over the mountains. Hunting can meet part of the nobles' demand for meat, so they attach great importance to it, and usually wait until mid to late summer or autumn to hunt. If a noble went to other noble territories to hunt, it would often trigger a war. Generally speaking, hunting is prohibited in spring, because this is the season for reproduction and growth. But now that spring is about to pass, Roman is just stuck on the deadline. Hunting experience +1. Hunting experience +1. In just 6 days, Roman took all the guards and searched most of the northern forest. After rigorous training, the guards' basic qualities have been greatly improved. No longer will they be scared out of their wits when encountering monsters, and will collapse at the slightest contact. Under the leadership of the 3 knights and Doda, they performed very professionally. Now they dare to step forward and hold up their shields to face brown bears, and then stab them with sharp spears. 5 guards can strangle a brown bear weighing 1,000 pounds. This can also be regarded as a training exercise, allowing them to see blood. The natural resources here are extremely abundant, and there are many wild animals. The harvest of these days' sweeps is to kill more than 10 wild boars, 2 wild bears, 6 mountain deer and other large monsters, as well as a large number of medium-sized wild animals such as roe deer, foxes, lynxes, and gray wolves. As for small wild animals such as birds, squirrels, badgers, hares, pheasants, etc., it is even more impossible to calculate. For pregnant or underage wild boars, bears, and deer, Roman chose to let them live. Even so, this brought Roman more than 70,000 kilograms of various meats. This made him regret it. He should have come to hunt earlier. At least he could have made up for some of the food shortage. But on the other hand, after surviving the winter, the beasts lost weight in the spring, and it took 2 or 3 months for them to eat again. If they had hunted in the spring, the amount of meat would have been reduced. The more than 300 calves and horses in the Origin Manor were busy for a long time, peeling off the complete fur and taking out the internal organs for pickling. These things can also be eaten. Finally, they were all dismembered and hung up to dry. So, in the foreseeable few months, the pigs and sheep in the livestock shed successfully escaped. Level 2 Hunting. 5 // 380. milestone unlocked, sharp eyes, sharp eyes, obtain 500 original stones, hunting, skills were raised to level 2 as expected. First, the complete basic knowledge of survival in the wild was unlocked. Second, the relevant drawings of bows and crossbows were unlocked. This made Roman very interested, but there was no way to make these weapons for the time being. So Roman had to put it aside for the time being. His original intention was to continue hunting to the north, now that everyone had gone deep into the forest and was approaching the northern mountains. The transportation of prey had become a big problem, and more people had to be mobilized. Moreover, the arrival of a piece of news also interrupted Roman's idea of continuing hunting. Dakin is coming. The hull was up and down, and the sound of the rapids rang in his ears. We'll be there soon. He held his sister's hand tightly with his young hand, trying to stretch his body so that she could have room to breathe. The latter's face was yellow, which was an extremely unhealthy color. She was seasick. They were born in a coastal fishing village, but his sister had never been on a boat since she was a child. He often followed his father to go fishing. But superb fishing skills could not fight against pirates. He witnessed a raging fire in the small fishing village. His parents fell under the bleeding axe blade one after another, and he and his sister became slaves after that night and were sold to slave traders together. For more than half a month, they have been transferred several times, wandering all the way, and even sleeping at night is not peaceful. More and more slaves joined them, listening to the slave traders' instructions in a days and heading to the next place. The gradually weakened body can only feel strong fatigue and hunger, without any basis for resistance, but no matter what, he has to take care of his sister. He only has this relative. Hold on. He didn't know how many times he said it, but at this moment he couldn't say more words to comfort his sister. Those physiological pains were never weakened by any words. When will the bitter journey end? He didn't know. His sister was also immune to his repetitive and clumsy words, and just asked in a daze, "Can we really survive?" "Yes," he said, but he was not confident enough. "Brother, throw me down, let me die, go to find my parents, so that I don't have to be so uncomfortable." He heard this, and he felt heartbroken. He knew that his sister was almost at her limit, otherwise how could she say such vicious words? He said nothing, but held her tightly in his arms. However, the river was particularly turbulent in this section, and the boat was pitching so hard that it seemed to throw the slaves on the boat up. He held his sister's wrist even tighter, and the crowd shook violently with the ship. The ship was full of stench, and some people were seasick, but there was no food in their stomachs, so they could only vomit acid. At this time, he heard a splash, and he didn't know whether someone fell into the water or was squeezed off the ship by other slaves. No matter which one it was, the unlucky guy was doomed. He resisted the shaking of the ship as much as possible and began to drag his sister to the mast to prevent the two of them from becoming the next unlucky guy. It was just that. It was extremely difficult to get past, and it was inevitable that many people would be squeezed. In the process, he also stepped on the bodies and hands and feet of some people, but he didn't say sorry, and the people who were stepped on didn't respond at all, just lying numbly on the deck, all of them piled up on each other, and it was no wonder that they were thrown out of the ship with such a half-dead look. He went to the mast and hugged his sister in his arms. The small movement actually exhausted all his physical strength. Looking up, he could only see steep mountains and rocks. The entire sky was squeezed into a line by the mountains, and the white torrent shuttled through the canyon. He tried his best to hold on, occasionally talking to his sister to attract her attention so that she would not be frightened by this difficult journey. After an unknown amount of time, the hull gradually calmed down. He finally breathed a sigh of relief and felt drowsy. When he was about to fall asleep, he suddenly felt the hull of the ship shake violently, as if it had hit something. He immediately knew that the ship had docked. Soon, he heard the slave trader and the guards shouting, asking them to get up and get off the ship quickly. Most of the slaves almost didn't stand when they landed, which delayed some time, but slowly, everyone could get off. He waited until everyone got off the ship, took some time to recover his strength, pulled up his sister, and followed the end of the crowd to get off the ship. After landing, he realized that this was the end. After carefully observing the environment, he found that this place was isolated from the world and was not suitable for him to escape with his sister. Of course, he didn't have any thoughts or motivation to escape. Everything is based on the most basic survival, and they can't survive with just the two of them. If they die, then there will be nothing. He followed the direction where the slave trader trotted and saw the young man riding a white horse, carrying a large bow, wearing hunting clothes, and with his hair tied up in a bandana. Today's sun is particularly strong, perhaps the lingering scent of spring attracts the passion of the hot summer. The man came on horseback, and the bright sunshine seemed to pave the way for him. His already strong body looked radiant, his long brown and black hair was like a lion, and his red eyes were particularly dazzling. Chapter 66 Slave's Desire. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Today is the 86th day since Roman came to Sig Town. Dakin last came to Sig Town more than a month ago. During this period of time, the number of people in his caravan has increased significantly, to about 20. He changed from a grocery business to a salt and slave trader. This was mainly due to what Roman said to him. Sig Town would use salt to buy all the slaves he had. The promise of the nobles gave Dakin enough confidence. He hired a lot of guards and even rented 2 medium-sized transport merchant ships from the Bay port. This kind of merchant ship is made by overlapping. The hull is short and wide, about 10 meters long and 3 or 4 meters wide. The cargo capacity is very large. It is not a problem to stuff 70 or 80 slaves into the cabin. When necessary, they can also be used as rowers. The slaves he transported last time died due to multiple factors such as crowding and hunger. Dakin did not repeat the same mistake this time. Even the daily standard ration has been increased from half a caddy of grains in the past to 8 taels of grains today. The 6 boats were filled with heads. People were next to each other, squeezed, pressed, and stacked. It looked like the legendary slave ship. After passing through the rapids of the Silver Dragon Canyon, except for 2 slaves who unfortunately fell off the boat and drowned, Dakin arrived at the town of Shipwreck without any trouble. When Roman arrived at the dock with the guards, he saw the slaves in the distance at a glance, and the number of heads was even greater than last time. The horse stopped moving forward. Roman pulled the reins, and it could only pace in place. Dakin trotted to Roman, bowed first, and then said, "Master Roman, I have more than 400 slaves on the boat now. To be precise, there are 417 slaves in total." This is the result of his hard work for a month. These days, he didn't eat or sleep well, and he went to various places. In order to gather these slaves, it can be said that he mortgaged all his assets on this. Roman did not disappoint Dakin. He sat on his horse and looked at people with his nose, and just hummed lightly. This showed that he accepted all the slaves. The merchant happily discussed the specific details of the transaction with Seth. In the end, the town of Shipwreck offered a price of 40 kilograms of salt for each slave, an average of 8 copper coins to buy 1 slave, which was lower than the market price. The average price of slaves last time was 1 silver coin, and nearly 200 slaves were exchanged for 4,000 kilograms of salt, and Roman paid a deposit of 10 gold coins in advance, but this was buying horse bones with 1,000 gold coins, and using the method of moving wood to establish trust to establish trust to establish trust. Don't think about selling at the high price last time. Dakin also knew this reason, so he had no dissatisfaction. He knew that the quality of his batch of slaves was slightly better than the previous batch, but it was still difficult to sell at a high price, let alone exchange for a large amount of salt. After sending them to the town of Shipwreck, he was able to take away more than 16,000 kilograms of salt, which at least brought him a profit of more than 60 gold coins. This means that he can double his worth every time through the trade of slaves and salt. Dakin couldn't wait to load the salt onto the ship. He was completely overwhelmed by the huge profits. He quickly left the town of Shipwreck and began to eagerly prepare for the next transaction. Looking at the back of Dakin's merchant ship leaving, Roman waved his hand. More came to him immediately. Roman gestured and said, "Ask the food camp to make a meal quickly and build a shelter. These slaves are now his property. If they starve to death, he will also suffer losses. Let's have a meal first, and don't think about housing for the time being. The livestock shed can't sleep so many people." Roman had to temporarily build a shelter in the forest or on the grass for them to spend a few nights. It's early summer now, and the temperature at night is not freezing. "Yes, yes." More nodded continuously. Now there is a shortage of manpower everywhere in Siggy Town. It is obviously unrealistic to expect the new slaves to work on the same day. Roman had to pull out the calves in Siggy Town and come to the food camp to help cook or build shelters. It must be said that these calves are becoming more and more convenient to use. Although they can't do big things, they are like bricks and can be moved wherever they are needed. No wonder children over 10 years old are regarded as basic labor. It was getting close to dusk. He brought his sister to the place where they got food. The 10 guards in the distance stood tall, holding spears with steel-cast spearheads flashing cold light. They shouted every half a minute to warn the slaves in line. Don't cut in line. Don't squeeze. Each person is one step apart. If you dare to squeeze forward again, I will teach you how powerful you are. That there were some bloodstains on the ground, proving that this was true. Before the carriage brought food, the guards asked them to line up. However, facing the smell of food wafting from the carriage, most slaves couldn't control their bodies and rushed forward at the same time. The situation got out of control immediately. The guards, who stood in a row like a solid wall, immediately stood in front of the carriage to stop them. After several failed persuasions, they decisively used force to suppress the crowd, wielding spears and mercilessly beating the crowded crowd, leaving them with bruises and bloody heads. Fortunately, he saw that the situation was not good, so he quickly pulled his sister back and hid, escaping the disaster. Finally, after more than 10 minutes of delay, the queue order was restored. There were wooden barrels, baskets, and piles of wooden bowls and plates on the carriage. The woman who served the food was a white-haired woman with a strong body, about 30 or 40 years old. He knew that most white-haired people basically came from the northern land, and he had heard from his father's generation about the horror legends about the frost giants and those giant beasts in that land. The woman's movements were very skillful. She picked up the iron spoon and scooped a full bowl in the wooden barrel. The soup was very thick and did not splash at all. Another woman put a wooden bowl full of mixed vegetable soup, 3 thick slices of black bread, and 2 small wooden sticks on the plate. After seeing the queue take away the plate, the winter woman shouted, "Next!" After the slave in front of him left, he also became the slave standing in front. He held the wooden plate and waited for his sister behind him to take the meal. The two did not wolf down the food on the spot like other slaves, and then were expelled by the guards. Instead, they came under a tree, leaned on the big tree, and ate slowly under the shade of the big tree. The younger sister quickly recovered from her seasickness and said nothing more. She held the 2 wooden sticks with her 5 fingers, picked up the vegetables in the bowl, and then tilted her head to bite the cabbage hanging on the stick. "Brother, there is meat," she suddenly said in surprise. He also saw the meat in his bowl when he was stirring the mixed vegetable soup. Originally, he wanted to see if there were any stones or gravel, but he found that the purity of this bowl of soup was amazing. After a light taste, he found that the main ingredients of this bowl of soup were not all vegetables. It should be mixed with white flour, salt and meat. Since there was in his bowl, there must be in the younger sister's bowl. After all, their meals were scooped out from the same wooden barrel. "Eat quickly." He just reminded her twice. The 2 of them ate in a daze. "Brother, the master here is really good. It would be great if every meal was so good." The younger sister licked the corner of her mouth. Although she was young, she was forced to understand a lot in this era. She had seen the plight of slaves in the small fishing village, and was afraid that she would also end up in such a miserable situation when she was on the boat. It is better to die than to live, she was afraid every day. After that displaced journey and the last turbulent rapids, could they settle down? Now it seems that they might, but no one can say what their next meal will be, and this may be the best meal. The slave traders only feed them those hard-to-swallow leftovers every day. Maybe. Hearing his sister's words, the figure riding a white horse and carrying a big bow appeared in his mind. The man was wearing hunting clothes, and his clothes were stained with obvious blood. He looked noble and heroic as if he had returned from hunting. The slave traders also had to kowtow in front of him, like a pug wagging its tail to beg for reward. After he ate and recovered his strength, he thought of that scene and felt a warm current surging in his body, just like the waves in his heart surging and the fierce tide sweeping the beach. He could feel the source of that emotion, that was the blood flowing in his heart. The raging fire left after the burning of the small fishing village. Hatred would not disappear because of becoming a slave, it would only smolder in the heart. When he saw the figure walking on the light, the flames burst into flames. He was extremely eager. If he had power and authority, he would never have fallen to this point. Every day he spent as a slave, on the ship, on the road, he was in pain and regret all the time. He hated his powerlessness and regretted his weakness, but no one could hear the anger in his heart, and no one could hear the roar of a slave, because the voice of a slave could not be heard in this era. He could only lie dormant, just like an ordinary slave. The first task before him was to survive. Look for opportunities. Get the appreciation of the nobles. He would climb up at all costs. Get power, get strength, and fight back. Chapter 67 Second Recruitment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It is very easy for Roman to feed slaves, but the waste of resources and labor is something he cannot tolerate. After getting this batch of slaves, there are about 2,500 people in Siggy Town now. During this period, 9 children were born in Siggy Town, and the population growth rate is terrible, although Roman told every merchant ship passing through Siggy Town that he wanted to buy slaves, but so far, those small caravans have not sent him a large number of slaves, only 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5, now he has to rely on Dakin, although Maury can also do slave business. He is currently purchasing oxen and draft horses. For the slaves that Dakin brought last time, Roman temporarily selected 10 slave managers who seemed reliable and let them manage themselves as long as they did not cause trouble. The lack of grassroots managers gave Roman a headache. The managers in Siggy Town did not show the quality of improvement. In other words, they are still using the medieval landlord thinking. To govern those idiots, self-righteous and stingy. If he and Seth hadn't kept a close eye on them, the food they arranged for the laborers would have been eaten by these guys. The manager in charge of the oven and the mill was thinking about how to mix sawdust, sand and stones into the black bread every day, and he fought with Seth for this. Roman was so angry that he almost chopped off his head. Earlier, the farm tool manager also opposed Roman's recasting of the iron plow. If Roman hadn't opposed everyone, deep plowing alone would not have been possible. The cowherd thought about how to let his cows rest every day. When building the road, because there were not enough felling tools, Roman asked the oxen to work together to pull up the trees, but he dared to jump out and object. A group of misers and stingy people, typical landlords and rich people. Every day they think about how to squeeze resources out of their teeth. And squeeze the laborers to death. TMD. Is the money saved? Don't you know that this will only make those stupid people more stupid? If you don't feed them enough, how can they have the energy to work? How can they work efficiently if they only rely on those 2 unnutritious meals every day? They will die of exhaustion before they are 50. Roman was not kidding. Eating 2 meals a day, without nutritional supplements, and doing high-intensity labor, they are completely burning their own blood bars, and they are all pale and thin. If you don't die, who will die? They will die when they are 50. What a waste. Eat more and work until you are 70 or 80 years old before dying. I can't stand it. Roman felt it necessary to train a new batch of management grassroots, just like he cancelled the original captain of the guard and appointed Doda as the captain of the guard. Only the apostle made Roman feel at ease. When Doda became the captain of the guard, his relationship with Roman increased sharply, from the initial 10% to the current 60%. Although not as good as Green and Aaron's 70% to 80%, but it is still considerable. It is worth mentioning that Seth and his relationship have now broken through the 80% mark, approaching 90%. Roman found the apostle named Talma whom he recruited for the 6th time. He was just an ordinary farmer. His stats and skills were not as good as those of Barrow, the son of Matthew. Roman did not entrust him with important tasks, but let him go. Even so, Talma and his relationship gradually increased from the initial 10% to about 20%, because the information is limited at present, so Roman can only roughly understand relationship as the apostle's loyalty to him, or favorability, trust, intimacy, etc. Probably because Roman improved their treatment, Talma's trust in him increased. This can also reflect the apostles' views on Roman, and the source of the apostles is Roman subjects. In the past, Roman did not continue to recruit after the initial recruitment, mainly because, how many talents can appear in a town with a population of 2,000? Roman thought that the one with the highest potential star rating was Gwyler, followed by 4-star Aaron and 3-star Green. The latter 2 were the knights he brought from the Grand Dukedom and could not be counted. It was a blessing for Siggy Town to have a Gwyler. Roman almost fought with Shasta for her. He only now knew that guy almost killed the 6th level Dawn Knight, and now thinking about it, his back was a little cold. The number of raw stones used for recruitment exceeded 10,000, according to the normal accumulation process, including the milestone reward of Story of Life. Roman should have 9,780 raw stones now. However, because a piece of magic ore was dug in the middle, a small part of the magic ore remained after making holy salt, and Roman converted it into 800 raw stones. That is, 10,580 raw stones. This number is enough for him to recruit 68 apostles. However, the pool in Siggy Town is too shallow. If the pool is full of 1-star apostles, it will be useless, mainly because there is no training value. He has no extraordinary resources now, and he can't improve the skills and attributes of the apostles. These low-level apostles can't even support him to launch a small-scale expedition. These more than 400 slaves barely expanded the recruitment pool. Roman is ready to launch a second recruitment. He didn't do it right away, but waited until all the slaves' weak bodies recovered. Roman thought that this might help with shipment. 3 days later, under his order, all the slaves were gathered on the lawn of the Origin Manor. He wanted to select some talented people from this group of slaves, either to be sent to the army or to work as blacksmiths, and those with strong wills would be arranged to be reserve managers. 40 guards straightened their posture and asked them to stand in a row. After waiting for a few minutes, a square formation with 20 people in a horizontal row and 21 people in a vertical row appeared in front of Roman. Doda shouted, "No one is allowed to speak. Stand upright. Don't move." Roman sat on a wide chair. He sat in a very bold posture, with a big horse and a golden sword. He put his arms on the armrests, leaned his body sideways, and stared into the void. To outsiders, he was a little absent-minded. The slaves didn't know what the Lord wanted them to do. They had undoubtedly received great preferential treatment in the past few days. There were 3 meals a day, and the food fell into their stomachs, but their hearts were lifted up, and today probably determined their future fate. Many slaves secretly swore that no matter what the Lord asked them to do, they would rush to do it and do their best to ensure their future treatment. After many days, Roman conducted the second recruitment of apostles. The grey pool was flickering with dense and weak starlight. Compared to the initial recruitment, the number of starlights has increased. Roman was actually nervous. He has been able to do everything with ease these days. He took a deep breath. It was not like the first recruitment, where he could only draw cards one by one due to lack of resources. This time he directly drew 10 times in a row. Swish. 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 10 weak starlights emerged from the pool and rushed up. The momentum was like a comet attacking the moon, like a white rainbow piercing the sun. The first card floated in the void, surging with pure white light. Tap. Tap. A young face with honest features and simple eyes appeared on the card. 2-star Luca, can be given an apostle code: attack, E, defense, E+, speed, E-, constitution, E+, energy, E. Talent, resistance, increased resistance, first skill, stability. The body will not easily lose its center of gravity. Chapter 68 Cow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. This is barely a good start. Roman took a closer look at the apostle named Luca and felt that he looked familiar. He soon discovered that Luca was the first batch of slaves transported. He was sleeping in the barn now. There were only about 2,000 people in Siggy Town. Roman had seen the appearance of all of them. He had a good memory and vaguely remembered that Luca was a plateau native from the east. It was a pity that he was unlucky. There was no place for him among the 10 slave managers that Roman temporarily arranged. Now I know that Luca has the potential of a 2-star, I'll arrange him to be the new manager of the barn later, Roman thought. After Luke's card dissipated, the second card also appeared, a 1-star apostle. Nothing to say. The third, fourth, fifth, all are 1-star apostles. Roman frowned slightly, but he recruited 7 times the first time, and there were also 4 1-star apostles. Only Doda was valuable. The 6th card floating above the card pool burst into a rich purple glow. Thump. 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 Roman stood up suddenly. This unusual action immediately attracted the attention of Green and Aaron, who were standing on both sides. They were dressed in silver-white armor, standing tall and looking very eye-catching. considering the current atmosphere. The two did not ask Roman what was wrong as usual, they could only do their duty and act as a front to create a sense of majesty for Roman. Swish. The purple glow dissipated. The person on this card was a young man about 14 or 15 years old. He was quite good-looking, with a dark complexion, a young but resolute face, brown hair, and light blue eyes as cold as a knife. 4-star cow, can be given an apostle code: attack, E+, defense, E, speed, E, constitution, E, energy, E. Talent, sharpness, normal attack power increased, skill 1. Abdominal breathing, endurance and recovery power increased when used. Skill 2, blood feud, attack power greatly increased when angry and searching for enemies. That he noticed that the Lord stood up and then sat down again. It was as if the Lord just felt uncomfortable sitting, so he changed his posture. The chair made of bear skin has excellent texture. I don't know what it feels like to sit on it, and they can only stand. He didn't know what happened, but he knew that the guards were watching them. Slaves cannot look at the Lord, or even raise their heads. If they are discovered, they will be regarded as an act of transgression and will be scolded or beaten. They can only lower their heads and shrink their backs like quails, waiting for the Lord's orders. Slaves should act like slaves. He remembered the survival rules of this era and made himself more like a slave than a slave, but he and the other slaves stood for dozens of minutes. Most of the slaves' legs began to tremble, and he noticed from the corner of his eyes that his sister was also a little unstable, and the Lord still did not give any instructions. They came here after breakfast in the morning, now standing now. The sun has begun to rise gradually, and the sunlight is getting stronger. Another 10 minutes passed. Some slaves with weak constitutions did not hold on, their legs softened, and they collapsed to the ground. The guards said nothing, but just dragged them out. This seemed to trigger a chain reaction. Most of the slaves began to collapse on the ground at the same time, and all of them could not hold on at once. Idiot. He cursed in his heart the same words as the Lord. He felt that this was a test, or some kind of selection, just like a fishing net only catches big fish. Only worthless small fish can escape from the mesh. If you don't perform well, you will never be valued. So he tried to stand up straight and try to be salvaged ashore. The guards didn't say much, and dragged people out one by one. After a while, there were only 30 or 40 slaves left here. The sister looked at him for help, her legs trembling, and she also wanted to quit this special torture, but he didn't agree, but glared at his sister hard. The sister felt a little wronged, so she had to continue to hold on. More than 10 minutes passed. All the slaves standing were holding on, and he felt that they were thinking the same thing. This performance is very likely to determine their future status. If they are a little fanciful, they may get rid of their slave status. Even if they don't, they can get better treatment, and the slaves who have recovered in the shade gradually came to their senses, and some regretted that they shouldn't have quit so early. If they hold on, they may get a different look from the Lord. The sun is high, the sun shines on the body, the temperature is very high, and everyone is sweating. Plop. He suddenly saw his sister's body fall down, her eyes closed, and she fainted. He was very anxious and instinctively wanted to check on her. Reason held him back. He couldn't move, and felt very tormented. The sweat on his forehead gathered into a small river, flowing from his forehead to his eyes, which was very rough and made it difficult for him to open his eyes, but he didn't dare to reach out to wipe it. A guard also came over, checked his sister's condition, and carried her to the captain, as if saying something. Soon, a manor maid came over with a bowl of water. He gradually felt relieved. Without the burden of his sister, he kept his posture with all his heart and soul, lowered his head, and tried to stand as straight as those guards, as if they were competing. Those who were still standing also stubbornly maintained this posture, but even so, people kept falling down. This is a challenge about perseverance and will, and most people in this era have not tempered the spirit of perseverance. They live, they accept it. They just choose a less miserable way of life in many miserable lives. The reason for farming is that if you don't farm, you will starve to death. The reason for working is that if you don't work, your life will be miserable. If life is worry-free, who doesn't want to sleep until you wake up naturally? If you can rest, who wants to persist and fight? This is human instinct and also the weakness of human nature. People who can fight against instinct and weakness are always a minority. He didn't know how long it had been. He couldn't open his eyes. Sweat flooded his face, making him feel suffocated. His body was scorching hot, as if he was drowning. His perception of the outside world was not so strong, and his mind was full of random thoughts. Maybe the noble master had left long ago, why would he continue to waste time with the slaves? He had heard about this from the winter women who served food these days. The manor where the Lord lived had a large vegetable field. The parsnips and cabbages they ate were dug from the manor and were all planted by the Lord himself, the meat in the mixed vegetable soup was also the meat that the Lord took people to hunt and purchased in large quantities, so they, the slaves, also benefited from it. If not, how could slaves in this era eat meat? They were full of gratitude. He was born on the coast and ate fish every day. He knew that farmers in the inland rarely ate meat. In fact, the reason they ate fish was because they couldn't afford grain. Grain and meat were equally precious. The Lord also wants to grow vegetables, which means he is very busy. Maybe he has left a long time ago to harvest vegetables. Maybe he can relax. He felt his head was hot and confused. He struggled and wanted to give up, but his body did not move. Cowards, don't think you can defeat me, he said viciously in his heart, until someone carried him out. He finally took a breath, and his eyes closed tightly at some point. He couldn't open his eyelids and felt dizzy. Someone next to him handed him a bowl of water. He took it instinctively, shaking his hands, and the water kept dripping, splashing on his wrists and the ground. He didn't care, just drank it in big gulps to moisten his cracked lips. The moment the cold water entered his throat, his mind became clear. He opened his eyes and his vision became clear. He was shocked to find that the person in front of him was the lion-like young lord, who looked not much older than him, but was noble and lofty. He sat on the wide bearskin chair with a calm demeanor. The moment that figure came into his sight, his breathing became rapid, as if there was some kind of extremely fatal attraction that made him obsessed and crazy. "What's your name?" That he heard the Lord ask him this. The Lord actually smiled at him. His voice was very soft, and his eyes looking at him were also very gentle. He was originally very calm. Reason told him to be calm. But now he couldn't suppress the excitement and trembling in his heart. He knew why the slave trader had to kowtow in front of this young lord. It was because when this figure was placed in front of him, there was really an irresistible charm and momentum, which instantly disintegrated all his psychological defenses and resistance. Now the Lord gave an order to let him launch a life-or-death charge, and he was also willing 1,000 times. He stammered, "Master, my name is Cow, son of the fisherman, Cow Fisher." Chapter 69. What about me? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Cow once vowed that he would make a name for himself. In order to gain the favor and appreciation of the Lord, he made long-term plans for this. First, he had to work very hard for several years, working as a slave, dressing up his sister Sana beautifully, and letting her sleep with a powerful steward, which might help him get rid of his slave status. If he was lucky, he could follow the steward's footsteps and enter the Lord's vision. By then, he would be a complete adult and have stronger mobility. He would become a guard, defeat all competitors, and become a steward at the captain level. This land is becoming more and more turbulent. Even his father, a fisherman, often sighed like this. He felt that he would definitely participate in the war for the Lord in the future. As long as he could survive, his status would be improved. He would be powerful. He would no longer be powerless, and he could go to the pirates and crush their limbs. This is what Cow planned. Sooner or later, he would also be able to roar in this era. As a slave, get rid of the weak past. But he never thought that this would happen. On the third day of becoming a slave, the master actually came to him. The noble Lord asked him, "So, do you want to be my knight?" Roman liked the boy in front of him very much. He had a strong will and high talent potential. More importantly, after recruiting him as an apostle, Roman saw that Cow and he had a relationship of 42% loyalty. Too loyal. If he is not trained to be a knight of war, what are you waiting for? When Aaron and Green heard what Roman said, they were extremely shocked. What does a knight of war mean? That means real power, let alone the difficulty of training. It is very difficult to select from each level. Aaron and Green also stood out from dozens or hundreds of children of the same age when they were young. They have excellent qualifications and can adapt to rigorous training, so they can learn various skills and martial arts in the Grand Duke's castle, which laid the foundation for knowing Roman. Now Roman selected the trainees for the battle knights with only one initial selection. This kind of selection seemed trivial to both of them. In their opinion, the performance of this boy named Cow was just enough to be useful. He was relatively resilient and qualified to be a guard. He could become the captain of the guard in time, the result. Battle Knight? This was ridiculous. No, it should be said that it was too outrageous. Both of them had an impulse to pry open Roman's head and take a good look at what he was thinking. Was it a fight between brain nerves and brain cells? Both sides suffered heavy casualties, and Roman was beaten into an idiot. Of course, if they really wanted to do this, they would see the voice of purple, for stars, repeating in Roman's mind repeatedly. Cow had no idea what Roman saw, he just felt flattered. Battle Knight. The strongest force on this land. Only battle knights can fight against battle knights. This was almost a consensus. Now, this is no longer a question of promotion. Cow even thought he had heard it wrong, or it was some kind of hallucination, so he pinched his palms hard and found that it was real. I am willing. Master. I am willing to fight for you with my life. Cow imitated the legends he had heard, kneeling on his knees excitedly, moving forward on his knees, and even wanted to hug the Lord's thighs and kiss his shoes. Roman looked at the boy who rushed up excitedly, smiled faintly, then raised his leg, stepped on Cow's head with his foot, and then stepped on his side face in the soil. Cow was very docile and did not resist at all. Because the force of stepping on him was so light, he could not feel the pain, but only felt supreme glory. Roman raised his elbow, supported his chin, raised his foot, and said lightly, "Behind me are two knights named Aaron and Green, who will take you to train in the future." Cow stood up and looked at the two cold figures covered with full armor and helmets. There was dirt on Cow's right face and footprints on his left face, but he nodded vigorously. Roman put his hand on Cow's face, gently brushed off the dirt, and said gently, "Don't let me down in the future." Cow's eyes were full of bloodshot, and he was so excited that he burst into tears and couldn't say a word. "Go and eat. You must be hungry after standing for so long. I asked the chef to prepare your meals. You will live in the manor in the future and eat more every day." Cow was so excited that tears flowed down his face. He said, "Master, I have a sister." Roman was not displeased at all. Instead, he said more gently, "Then let your sister come to my manor." Led by the maid, Cow left with tears of gratitude. Roman's mouth curled up and he hummed a few words with complacency, lightly waved his fist and picked up a treasure. Green saw that everyone had dispersed and finally couldn't hold it back. He asked, "Isn't this too hasty?" Roman asked back, "Haste?" Aaron nodded, "It is a bit hasty. You know, their selection process will last for half a month, so that they can select the most qualified and outstanding trainees." Green added, "Aaron and I were both selected when we were 5 or 6 years old. Any knight who competes must be trained before the age of 12 at the latest. From what I see, he looks about 14 or 5 years old." "Years old?" Aaron also nodded and said, "You are a bit old." Point 2 Fighting knights questioned Roman's decision. The training cycle for war knights is long. The earlier it is cultivated, the higher the potential that can be developed. This development is not about exercising very early, but laying a foundation from an early age. In Roman's opinion, it's purely a matter of nutrition. When I was a child, I was undernourished, and it became increasingly difficult to make up for it as time went by. Wu Daowang's skeleton is set, and even if he eats 10 tigers as an adult, he still won't be able to grow into Wu Song's body type. Ka is relatively strong among his peers. He probably wasn't hungry when he was a child. Although he is far less physically fit than Roman, he is still considered healthy. Roman can ignore anyone's advice, but Glenn and Yalin's opinions cannot be ignored. These opinions are quite pertinent. He needs to give an explanation. Roman looked sideways at Aaron and said to him, "That child's future achievements will not be worse than yours." Aaron had always been taciturn, so when he heard this, he stopped talking. Since Roman has decided it, he has no objection. Green was stunned when he heard this. He waited for a moment, and when he saw that Roman had no intention of explaining to him, he couldn't help but pointed at himself. "What about me?" Roman glanced at Green and let out a disdainful snort. "What does the 4-star thing have to do with you?" He patted his butt, stretched out, and left here under Green's eyes that were about to burst into flames. "Eat, eat." Aaron patted Green on the shoulder, went back to the room, took off his armor, put on his regular clothes and headed to the restaurant. Green also went back to his room angrily. he didn't know what Roman was thinking, but the long-term tacit understanding made him know what Roman was thinking. Chapter 70 Explosion Rate and Shipwreck. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Roman recruited 20 apostles this time. They are .1 4-star apostle, 2 3-star apostles, 4 2-star apostles, 13 1-star apostles. Undoubtedly, Cow has the highest potential. Although the panel attributes are not good, the future is limitless. In comparison, a 3-star apostle that Roman drew is quite special, because the name of that apostle is Jet, Deserter Jet, 3-star Jet, can be given apostle code, Attack, D+, Defense, E+, Speed, D, Constitution, D-, Energy, D-, Talent. Standardization. Establish a universal paradigm. Skill 1, Military Training. Mastery of War Skills. Skill 2, Holy Light Swordsmanship. Greatly increase swordsmanship damage. Jet is at least a second-level extraordinary person. Roman believes that under the same conditions, Jet can easily kill Green, and it is good enough that Aaron can save his life. Green is 19 years old this year, and Aaron is 20 years old. Their career as knights has just begun. The knight teacher of the Grand Dukedom believes that they have the potential to advance to the 4th level with the help of extraordinary resources, and there is a chance that they can become second-level knights before the age of 22, but the teacher was wrong. Roman thinks that Aaron now has the power of a second-level knight. After all, there is no particularly specific standard or clear dividing line for this so-called extraordinary level. Under the same circumstances, those who are stronger than the first level are definitely the second level. Those who are stronger than the second level are definitely the third level. The first level may be able to beat the second level, but most likely they can't beat the third level. The second level may be able to beat the third level, but most likely they can't beat the fourth level, although this evaluation system has a long history. However, its standards are very confusing and vague, just like the titles of nobles. As for why there are so many levels, it should be attributed to the hobbies of warriors, just like there are always people who like to point out the way in the martial arts competition, so it is widely circulated. Because of the limitations of the times, there are no specific standards. At this time, the strength of the enemy depends entirely on one's own experience. Some well-informed knights can judge the enemy's approximate level from the speed, strength, and posture of the enemy's running and swinging swords, and they usually compare themselves. If Aaron is a 4th-level knight, those who are stronger than him are 5th level or above, those who are weaker than him are 3rd level or below, and those who can match him are strong people of the same level. The battle is full of variables. Aaron, who is also 2nd level, is vulnerable to Jet, although the paper data of the two is not much different. Aaron 3D2E, while Jet 4D1E, but just looking at Jet's skills and talents, Roman knows that Aaron can't defeat this deserter. The skills that can be manifested on the panel are usually what they are best at. The talents and skills of the apostles will change over time. For example, an apostle who only knows how to farm will evolve the skill of plowing the fields. In fact, most farmers in this era don't even know how to farm, and it's good to have a talent. Even so, the talents of those people will be submerged and cannot be manifested at all. Aaron did not evolve his own unique combat skills. Let's not talk about Jet's military training, for now, but holy light swordsmanship surprised Roman a little. This swordsmanship originated from the kingdom of Sin. No, to be precise, it came from the church. That most special kingdom has an inseparable connection with the church. Holy light swordsmanship is a swift and efficient terrifying swordsmanship. Rumor has it that the church has a group of secret and terrifying terrorist killers who are proficient in holy light swordsmanship and clean up any enemies for the church in the dark, and can make the knights bleed. The moment Roman saw the holy light swordsmanship, he even mistakenly thought that Jet came from that secret group that only lived in rumors. But that group of terrifying assassins never exposed themselves to the sun. In addition, only the swordsmen of Sinnoh are proficient in holy light swordsmanship. They are a special type of soldiers in Sinnoh Kingdom, and they kill all enemies with rapiers. Roman remembered some of Jet's deeds. He came to Sig Town about 5 years ago, not by boat, but by floating all the way to Sig Town along the Bro River. The rapids of Silver Dragon Canyon did not take the life of this extraordinary person. When Jet climbed up on the river bank, he was covered with wounds. When people asked him where he came from, he claimed to be a deserter. According to the laws of the Black Iron Kingdom, deserters are equivalent to thieves, and they are inherently dangerous. When Moore ordered the guards to capture this potential dangerous element with spears, Jet cut off the spearheads of several guards. he was covered in blood, staggering, and fled into the mountains, never to be seen again. Roman knew more. The seriously injured Jet fell into a coma in the mountains and was rescued by the dirty Dr. Guerin. Later, he settled in the mountains and lived in seclusion. No one knew where he was a deserter from. Seeing the holy light swordsmanship now, Roman suddenly remembered the Emerald War 6 years ago. It was a battle between the kingdom of Sin-No and the kingdom of Tsangyu, although the scale of the war was not large. But the result was quite horrible. All the people living in that area were slaughtered and blood flowed like a river. This made Roman interested in Jet. In his opinion, when everyone is an idiot, Jet is obviously not an ordinary idiot, but a high-level idiot. This is also the only apostle that Roman has drawn, who has strong talents and abilities, but cannot be used by him. He is not convenient to force Jet. Jet, the flower of the mountain, has the same attributes as the chaste heroine. If he uses force, it is easy to cause 3 losses. Jet loses once, Roman loses twice. He also needs to be persuaded by love. The second 3-star apostle is a teenager named Jimmy. Roman also has an impression of him. This child is a local, under the age of 15, so he comes to the Origin Manor every day to learn arithmetic and literacy. 3-star Jimmy can be given an apostle code: attack, E-, defense, E-, speed, E-, constitution, E-, energy, E-, talent, memory, enhance memory, skill 1. Strong memory. Memory is greatly improved when concentrating. Standard 5e panel. Minors are already in the development stage. The hostile external environment will kill their talents, and only a greenhouse can make them thrive. It is ridiculous for Roman to let the seedlings face the ravages of cold wind and blizzard when their roots are not well developed. Good seedlings should be nurtured. This is a child worth cultivating. Looking at the recruitment records, Roman found that his card drawing was affected by certain special factors. If the higher the star rating, the rarer it is, then most people in Stur town must have only 1 star. Roman maintained a high explosion rate without a guaranteed mechanism. Considering that Green and Aaron were the first to be recruited, this made Roman draw an approximate equal sign in terms of relationship. The higher the relationship, the easier it is to ship. However, Gwyler sank. Roman did not believe that the unlucky girl had no trust in him, so he could only blame the witch, Gwyler, for being special or the difficulty of extracting high-star apostles. Secondly, relationship is not a decisive factor. Roman also drew Dota when he didn't know Dota, and he looked at his relationship with Jet, which was only 14%. This showed that Jet didn't value him as a lord. This made Roman a little confused, mainly because the 2 card drawing rules he summarized contradicted each other and were somewhat disordered. Or maybe the recruitment pool itself is both disordered and orderly, but anyway, the future development direction is very clear.